John Wick Volume 4 came out a few weeks ago, and the future of the franchise has been uncertain, except for we know the Continental is coming, the spin-off series, the TV series, and we know the Ballerina is coming, the spin-off movie. We got more details on the Continental recently, and we got some potential insight into whether or not there's going to be a John Wick Chapter 5. I'll say at the front of this, spoilers for John Wick Chapter 4.
Spoilers.
All right. So basically, Deadline spoke with Albert Hughes a few days ago. He's the director of episodes 1 and 3 of The Continental. So, like I said, this is a spin-off TV series. It's only going to be 3 episodes. Each episode is 90 minutes, and they're going to air on 3 consecutive nights.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, so they're marketing it as like a big 3-night event, essentially. It's going to premiere in September on Peacock streaming service. Yeah, every time I say that, I see that same face.
So now do I have to subscribe to Peacock?
One of us does. I think I already used up my free trial, so I need you to sign up for a 1-week free trial. We'll watch it, and then we'll unsubscribe.
I'm going to accidentally sign up a week before this.
Yeah, we missed it by a day. So they interviewed Albert Hughes, the director of 2 episodes from The Continental. He gave a bunch of details that we'll talk about. In addition to that, they spoke with the John Wick producer, Basil Iwanek, and he talked about the prospects of John Wick 5. Do you want to start with that?
Sure.
So basically, there's a tradition where after every John Wick movie, it premieres a few months later in Japan. So Chad Stahelski, and that's the director of John Wick, and Keanu Reeves, that's the star of John Wick.
Keanu
Reeves. The two of them, after the Japanese premiere, they always sit down at a bar, split a bottle of whiskey, and start talking about the future of John Wick. And that's where they always decide whether or not there's going to be another one. Because they're like, every time you make one of these movies, it's so hard. You finish, you're like, never again. A few months pass, you go to Japan, you have some whiskey, and you're like, yeah, maybe we should do another one.
I'm thinking I'm back.
Exactly. So the producer said, we'll hopefully know more about the prospects of a John Wick 5 this September, because that's when the Japan premiere happens. And this is the quote. Once they get through their hangovers, if Keanu and Chad have figured out something cool, if they have an organic way back in that doesn't feel like BS, then there will be a John Wick 5. That trip to Japan, it's like waiting for a boat to emerge out of the smoke. But that's the impetus. These movies are really hard for Keanu and Chad, and everybody. By the time each one is over, most involved have said, never again, this is too hard, and we're not getting any younger. Then time goes by, you see it embraced by fans, and after working together every year for 11 years, it's become a family, and in some demented way, and we miss each other. But I totally defer to Chad and Keanu to figure out what and if that story is.
Wait, has it actually been 11 years since the first John Wick? Or since they started producing the first John Wick?
John Wick premiered in 2014. So probably they started working on it a couple years before that.
That's so crazy because I still think like, whoa, it's weird. Like I remembered when John Wick came out, I was like, wait, that's so weird that like Keanu Reeves is doing this like type of movie now, like out of nowhere.
That movie completely came out of nowhere. I remember that we decided to go see a movie, which is rare. Usually it's like there's a specific movie we want to see. We're looking forward to it. But we were like, we feel like seeing a movie. Go on Rotten Tomatoes. There's a new Keanu Reeves movie with great reviews. And I was blown away by it. Movie snuck up on everybody. And then the sequel was apparently going to go straight to video or straight to DVD. And yeah, it's some alternate reality. This franchise is nowhere near where it is today.
And it still feels weird to me that John Wick exists, but it's now been around for like 10 years. So I feel like I should have accepted it by now.
It still feels like a new thing. It's the same way with the MCU where people are nostalgic for the early days of the MCU. Because there are people who were children when it started, and now they're approaching adulthood. It's it's crazy. We're old enough to have been at the beginning and like long into the existence of certain franchises. Would you want to see a Chapter 5? Or if we got a Chapter 5, what would you want to see?
I mean, I would watch as many chapters as they're willing to make. And I feel like I can trust them not to, they're not going to run them into the ground, you know? Like they're only going to keep making them as long as they can make them good.
Mm-hmm.
What would I want to see in Chapter 5? I mean, how have they historically made it more and more interesting? Right? Like in Chapter 4, they up the stakes more, and they just keep bringing new elements of action that we've like actually never seen before.
Yeah, that I think that's like the primary way they keep growing it, exploring the world more, this world of this bizarre world of assassins, finding ways to up the ante with the action scenes. And I think chapter 4 found a way to up the stakes with the relationship with the blind assassin and some of the other characters. But I think that's what I'd want to see them double down on in chapter 5. I haven't felt the same emotional stakes as I did in the first one in any of the subsequent sequels. Adam talks about this a lot. He's actually really, what's the opposite of warmed up to? He's really cooled off on
Yeah.
chapter 4. Uh, After our podcast review, in the days that followed, he was like, I don't know, that movie wasn't that good. And then later he'll be like, I'm really not sure about that movie. And now he'll be like, man, it's too bad chapter 4 sucked. And I think really what he's getting at is that John Wick, the first one, you feel such a rage over that puppy. And you feel that anger and you really are on John Wick's side, kicking ass. And you definitely feel an element of that in 2 through 4, but never quite as much as that first one. So for me at chapter 5, I want to see it get more focused. I'm less interested in exploring that world. I mean, keep doing that. That stuff is cool, but I want them to bring the emotional stakes back.
How do you think they can do that?
I think it would be really hard to do it this soon after the last one because 1, 2, 3, and 4 all happened over the span of a few weeks. And it feels like we've really wrapped up that journey. Chapter 4 was the final chapter of that John Wick novel. Now it's the next book. So I think we need to wait probably for some more time to pass. And then it's got to be like a grizzled John Wick coming out of retirement. I mean, I guess that's what they did in the first one.
Yeah.
But like actually grizzled, a little bit older. That movie was originally intended to star a 70-year-old or possibly 60-year-old character. And they made him younger for the movie once they cast Keanu Reeves. But they can now do something that's closer to the original concept.
Yeah, so I mean, do you think a few years need to pass and he needs to actually start to live life again, and then that life needs to get taken away?
Yeah.
It, ju-
It
it just
feels repetitive, I know.
yeah, but you can probably get away with it, right?
Yeah. Or another way you can go is it's not for himself. It's not that his life gets turned upside down. It's that maybe he forms a relationship with somebody else. Not necessarily a romantic one, but just for one reason or another comes to care for or about someone. And they're in trouble. So he kind of comes out of retirement for them.
Just crazy idea throwing this out there. What if instead of revenge, let's say he has to save somebody, like it's like Taken, like a Taken type movie,
Right.
but it's kind of the opposite of revenge, right? Because you're trying to prevent somebody from getting hurt. You know, there's kind of there's a nice thematic arc
Yeah,
there,
the
right?
tough thing is all these ideas sound so been there, done that. And one of the nice things about the first John Wick is that it did feel a little different. Obviously, we've seen revenge movies before, but this one was, of course, it's not just a puppy, right? It was the last thing his wife left him, but his wife was already dead. She was taken by a disease. And so you have this guy who's just filled with this rage that he can't point at anyone. So when they take away his puppy, it's the perfect excuse to unleash it. And that's a little bit of a twist on the revenge thriller. And you didn't really need as much of a twist for 2, 3, and 4 because they all just followed from that one and just kind of continued the theme of he dipped his pinky back in the pond and something grabbed him and yanked him back down. But that journey is over. So I want them to do something that I can't think of. I want them to surprise me.
Yeah, we shouldn't have AI generate like 100 John Wick ideas then, right?
I think it'd be fun for like a second, and then you'd be like, these ideas are all just pretty terrible. He starts a podcast, and then his podcasting partner goes missing, and he has to go find him. Cheekster says, I think it would make more sense for Chapter 5 to be a prequel, showing how the impossible task went down. Fun fact, Chapter 2, one of the ideas they had was to make it a prequel, but it was going to be a twist, where you watch the whole movie, John is going to the edge of sanity and really pushing himself, and then at the end of the movie, twist, what you were watching the entire time was the impossible task. And actually, this was a prequel. But I don't know that I need to see that. I feel like I would want to see it move forward. I don't necessarily need to see it. I mean, we're going to get a prequel with the Continental. We're going to talk about that in a second. But I don't need to see a John Wick prequel. I feel like I get that character. If anything, I want to see what's next for him. I mean, assuming he's not dead. All right, let's talk about the Continental. So it was a pretty lengthy interview. I just pulled out a few highlights of what the director said. First, on the look and feel of the show. He says the John Wick films had their hyper stylized impressionist take on New York. We brought our own with a 70s feel. For me, the industry, the world, everybody was feeling angsty after COVID, looking for escapism. I wanted an escape, and this was it. And by the way, that is a running theme throughout the interview. He keeps talking about how much fun the show is. He was like, it's a little bit, he makes it sound like it really is escapism.
Hmm.
He also talked about how much he loves 70s music. And it just sounds like the show is really going to lean into that 70s setting and look pretty different, I think. These movies have this kind of weird neo-noir look to them with a lot of neon and stuff. So I get the feeling this show is going to look a lot grittier and different. He talked about Mel Gibson's character. So Deadline describes him as, so they say the series is set in the 70s and focuses on the origins of McShane's Winston and Reddick's Sharon, his right-hand man. The hotel is run by Cormac, that's Mel Gibson's character, an insecure and psychotic caretaker whose tenuous hold over the hotel causes him to do frightful things. Adding to that, the director said, he told Mel to go big, chew up the scenery if you want. John Wick films do that. He was like, oh, really? Really? I can do that. Laughs.
I don't get it.
That was Albert Hughes, the director, talking to Mel Gibson, telling him to go big. So it sounds like Mel Gibson's character is going to be crazy, chewing up the scenery.
That definitely feels like something Mel Gibson can do.
I think he could pull it off, right? We can picture that.
Wait, how do you square? You said you think it's going to be a grittier like world than like the John Wick movies, but he was also saying he wanted it to be like fun and like escapism.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm not super psyched by hearing that. Yes, the John Wick movies are fun, but I would have, in addition to him talking about how much fun the show is, I would have liked to have heard him also talk about character. Like, we do want you to care about these characters and we do want to have emotional stakes. And he didn't talk as much about that. I don't think that necessarily means it's not going to be there, because this is going to be, what, 4.5 hours of television? That can't be nonstop fight scenes. John Wick Chapter 4 somewhat pulled that off, but they had a huge budget behind it. That's not going to be the case, I think, with this TV show. So we need to have character. I want to lean into the grittiness and not just make this escapist fun.
Yeah, and they also don't have Keanu Reeves, right? Like I think I imagine they're not going to have as much fighting if you're not going to have like a star character or a star actor who can do like all these insane moves and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the questions I had for this, and they did bring it up in the interview. He says the difference between a TV series and the movies is you have 2 hours plus to tell one story. But in television, which felt refreshing to me, you have a longer story arc and more characters. But you can't just go wall to wall John Wick style. Also, not everybody's John Wick. He's a singular character. So that's essentially what you just said.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have a bunch of people who can pull off these fight moves, not just in terms of the actors, but in terms of the characters. Though that's not a problem. This is kind of like a musical. When you watch a musical, it's like not everybody can sing, but everybody in this movie is able to sing. And in this world where everyone fights, it could be just sort of the same thing. Everyone knows how to fight.
Yes, but I'm thinking even just practically in producing the movie, like part of what makes John Wick good is that like he's clearly doing most of his own stunts, Keanu Reeves, and like the camera's on him, like you see him do these cool things, and that's harder to achieve, I think, with a low budget without the right actors, right? It's not like a Marvel movie where they're just going to CGI everything.
Yeah, we don't want this to look like a CW, Arrow, or The Flash, where anytime an action sequence starts, tons of quick cuts, clear use of stunt doubles, and it's nothing against those shows. But when it comes to John Wick, I mean, that is what we're there for 90% of the time. It's the fact that Keanu Reeves is doing his own stunts, which means you don't have to cut too much, so you can actually see everything that's happening, and you really believe that that character is the one dishing out that ass kickery.
Yeah, and besides, I mean, the characters this show is about are not the fighters, right? Like they're the ones who run the Continental. And so maybe this will be a little less about the action and more about the drama and stakes of running a hotel for assassins. And I think that sounds pretty cool. And especially I think the 70s time period, it would be like that's going to be a cool atmosphere with the music and everything, and just to see what the world of assassins looked like back then.
I can picture a sort of Game of Thrones take on this, where you have different Continentals that are kind of competing with each other to be on top. There's all this strategery between them. That would be really cool. I mean, nothing from this interview indicates to me that we're going to get that, but the fact that Winston is the focus of the show, we might get more of that than we do fists and guns. But I'm sure we'll get plenty of that too.
I also wonder, what is like a maniacal caretaker of an assassin hotel? Like, what does he do? Like, what, like, what's he gonna do that's so maniacal? Like, I imagine there's a lot of maniacal things you could do, but I just don't know what they would
Well,
be.
because the baseline is so different. In
Yeah.
all reality, being a crazy assassin already makes you maniacal. Okay, but now you're in the world of crazy assassins. How does he take it one step further? But I will say, if you need to pull that off, I think Mel Gibson is the man for the job.
Yeah, that's also so weird. Like, has Mel Gibson been doing stuff recently?
He's been doing stuff, but it's a lot of straight to streaming, small releases. This is probably the most mainstream thing he's done, at least that I can think of.
Do you think this is like a Mel Gibson comeback?
No, I don't think so. To be completely honest, I'm a little worried about this show. I don't know. I don't think the original plan was to release it in 3 consecutive nights. That just kind of came out of nowhere. To me, it feels a little like let's just get this out there and just move on. And part of that, I don't know, did you watch the teaser trailer?
There was a teaser trailer?
Yeah, Alon, remember the Continental trailer? Yeah. It wasn't really mind-blowing. No. And for some reason, they kept emphasizing, we're going to the 9th floor. And if you look at the poster, it's an elevator with the 9th floor highlighted, as if we should be really excited about, like, we're finally going to see what's on the 9th floor of the Continental.
Didn't do it for me.
Yeah, Alon says it didn't do it for me. This is Peacock, yeah.
I don't know anything about the quality of their shows. It just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, what Alon said is, I don't know anything about the quality of their shows, but this being on Peacock just doesn't feel right to me.
Okay, wait. So I
Alright,
had
see
a
you, Alon.
feeling. All right, this whole time we've been talking about the Continental, Gil.
Yeah.
I felt like something was off. Like, I felt like you weren't totally being. I felt like you weren't being honest. Like,
You didn't hear the sarcastic tone every time I was reading the director's quotes?
like something just felt off. And I'm still confused by the comment where you were like, I think this is going to be a grittier take on John Wick. And I was just really confused. I'm like, what is he talking about?
Well,
and now the truth comes out.
Right. Well, what I'm trying to do here, what I loved about John Wick was the underdog spirit. You're like, can this guy really take down all these people? And then by the time you get to chapter 2, you're like, yeah, but it's just going to be fun to watch him take them all down. I'm trying to bring that back by telling this show, you're no good. Prove me wrong, please. I hope to be proven wrong.
Well, hopefully we'll see what's on floor 9.
Yeah, I can't wait. And by the way, so I think we'll wrap up the John Wick conversation right there.
Wait, so you really
Yeah.
think they're just sneaking it out? That's the 3-night thing? I thought it got me excited. I was like, what a cool like type of event. And it's going to be like a whole weekend of people just talking about John Wick.
I just can't imagine how many people can really set aside 90 minutes every night for 3 consecutive nights. It's almost like, why don't you just release it all at once if you're going to do that? And it would be different if it was airing on TV. It's like 8 o'clock, NBC. And it's like you got to set your calendar and be there at that time. I don't know. Something about it feels off to me, but maybe it'll be good. Like I said, I'm hoping for the best.
Wow, this is depressing.